So how do we do that? Well, assuming we are successful in all of our ambitious programs to cut use, increase efficiency, yeah, go to complex, for instance, that's great. And we actually level off at 30 trillion. Okay? We don't keep going up ridiculously. What that means is that in order to keep CO2 emissions to where they are in 2006 levels, not even roll them back to Kyoto, 1990, but 2006, means we're going to have to come up with 2/3 of that, or 20 trillion kilowatt hours, from non-fossil fuel. That's pretty dramatic. When you talk to anyone in the business, they say, no way, no way, we're not going to do that. So, but the alternative is just coal, because that's it. These are the alternatives. Okay, so renewables, nuclear, and fossil fuel, and that's it. So what Judith and I came up with is a third, a third, and a third. Okay, so a third fossil fuel, a third renewable, and a third nuclear of this 30 trillion. Now you actually capture the transportation issues that way as well, because if you're going to go to fully plug-in electric, you're going to have a lot of electricity. And it's either going to be, it's going to have to be base load, right? It has to be at night while you're plugging in your car between midnight and 5 a.m. and it's not going to be solar. Okay, so you need a base load electric to go to electric or even hydrogen, although hydrogen has its own problems. But fully plug-in electric cars, you're going to need a lot of electricity. And if it's not nuclear, it will be coal. And this is assuming that we do come up with 100 billion barrels of biofuels a year, which is a lot. I mean, all of this is ambitious. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, everything has to come up, and there's hurdles to every single thing, and it's going to take time, and you have to start now. Okay. So this is a sustainable distribution. If you want to be pessimistic, if you look at the money, look at the money. Okay, Exxon did make $50 billion last year, except for making a couple of really nice commercials. They did not invest much in renewables. Okay, they invested in traditional fossil fuel and unconventional fuels. So we're talking about coal to gas, things like that. That's where they're going, because that's what they do well. They're fossil fuel. I mean, the oil companies are fossil fuel companies, and they're very good at that. Don't expect them to suddenly change over to become renewables. They're good at fossil fuel. So they are going to do this because we have that. We have lots of coal that you can put into gas. It'll last 150 years, but we have a lot of it. And we're going to do it. If we don't raise the alternatives, we will simply go forward with what we've been doing for the last 50 years. So this is a pessimistic future. What the rest of the world is doing. This is India's planned installed power capacity by 2050. And if you look, sure, there's 100 new nuclear power plants planned. The first one's going to come online about 2012. They're doing it, 100 new nuclear power plants. That sounds like a lot. That's as much as we have. Okay, but if you look at this mix, it is exactly where we are now. Exactly where the U.S. is now. No change, no benefit, no help here. This is simply where we are now. And that's with 100 new nuclear power plants. So, of course, it's dwarfed by the 1,200 new coal-fired power plants that they're going to install. So again, it's all about the numbers, it's all about the percentages. You have to bring the alternatives up. Now, they have a lot of hydro, but still, hydro is pretty flat. I mean, we pretty much tapped out most of the big rivers in the world, so hydro is not going to increase much. In fact, we have not figured out how to decommission the big ones with their own issues. So everyone who likes renewables, hydro has been the best renewable in the last 30 years, and it will continue to be probably the best renewable in the next 30, but it's just not enough. It's not going to increase much. Okay, so if you talk to the public, they like renewables. The whole idea is wonderful. Of course, who would not like renewables? So if you say, you know, we need to do renewables, they have no problem. So if you're going to put policies out there that promote renewables and encourage renewables, they'll go for it. They're not going to stop it. The public is not going to stop it. And so we won't spend a lot of time on renewables because everyone agrees that they're good. We'll kind of skip to nuclear for the most part because no one talks about nuclear. Everyone's scared to talk about nuclear. So here's, well, we haven't done a good job so far in renewables. Here's, again, this is renewables in the US, and this is 0.1 trillion, not 1 trillion. So again, it hasn't done that much. We need to get up into the trillion kilowatt hour range to be effective. In fact, if you talk about any energy source, and it does not provide 1 trillion kilowatt hours a year, it is of no consequence. Because if we're trying to get to 30 or 40 trillion kilowatt hours, and you're down in the 500 billion, right, locally it'd be great. Sure, it might create jobs, it might do a little bit for that community, but it's not going to be significant worldwide or address the environmental or economic issues. But it has to get into the trillion kilowatt hour range. So these are the three that everyone thinks of as going to save us, and we haven't done a good enough job yet. If you talk to the American Council on Renewable Energy, the real renewable lobbyists, they think we can get to 3 trillion in the US. They think we can get to 4 trillion worldwide, or almost 5 trillion worldwide. That's great, but it's not 10. And again, whatever is not 10 will be coal. So in this scenario, the most optimistic scenario for renewables, we're still going to require 5 trillion more from coal. And that's not good. It's not good enough at all. If you talk to the industry, of course, they hope we get to 1. And that's definitely not good enough. I mean, these are not acceptable. Because if you're at 1, that means 9 trillion will come from coal. And that's assuming nuclear gets its 10 trillion. So again, it's a zero-sum game. I just want to throw out ethanol from corn is not a good fuel. Everyone knows that, I think. Food crops do not make good fuel crops. We are the biggest corn growers in the world, and a third of our crop will go to make ethanol this year, and it will not feed the 220 million people it was feeding in 2000, and just raising the vehicle standards to 35 miles per gallon to do it. So, okay, so in the U.S., what do we need to do? Well, everything we talk about, certainly, increase conservation and efficiency, sure, we'll save 1 trillion kilowatt hours. Increase the standards to 50 miles per gallon by 2015, not 35 by 2020, as in the 2007 energy policy. That's too little, too late. We can get to there easily. I mean, you can fly to Paris right now and rent a Ford that gets 50 miles a gallon, but why can't we get it here? Embrace the culture change, new green building practices, everything. We need to fix our grid, it's not very good, and we need to deal with materials. We need steel and copper. You're not going to do any of this without a lot of materials. So for 2040, if we're going to meet this third in the US, we need 100,000 3+ megawatt wind turbines. That's a lot of wind turbines. This is the big ones. That's going to take about 100 million tons of steel. That's a lot of steel. We're in a steel crisis. We need concentrated and ordinary arrays totaling 0.5 trillion. 200 new generation 3+ reactors. That's a lot, more than anyone is even discussing. But if we don't, we won't get there. 10 billion barrels of biofuels from the good stuff, from high efficiency biomass, not food. 0.8 trillion from everything else, and stop building coal-fired power plants, which we kind of have stopped. But we're building a lot more gas. All right, the 5 biggest problems that everyone talks about in nuclear. Okay, 1, it costs too much, it's dangerous, terrorists, no one knows what to do with the waste, and no one likes it anyway. So these are the things that everyone always talks about on TV. Every time everyone gets in front of Jon Stewart or something, they always say, we don't know what to do with the waste. Well, we know what to do with all of these. So we can or have already addressed these. All right? You need to standardize the units, which we're doing. NRC is doing that now. It's great. You need to streamline the whole process. You don't build a nuclear power plant different from every other nuclear power plant. I mean, that's not the way to standardize an industry and drop costs. It is the safest industry in the world, actually the safest endeavor in the history of humankind. There were many nuclear power plants along the 9/11 plane routes. They chose not to fly into them because even they knew it's not a good target. It's hardened. It's an inherently hardened target. There's no way that's an issue. Okay? And again, even the terrorists knew that. Waste disposal, I'll talk a bit about WIP, the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in New Mexico. We've been disposing of nuclear waste for the last 10 years. It's gone without a hitch. It's wonderful. It's great. It's fairly cheap. And it's easy. No one ever gets hurt. Not killed. I mean, not even hurt. And of course, we just, and NRC just completed the license application for Yucca Mountain. So we know what to do with this. We're on our way. And this can only be addressed, public perception, by the media. So truly, if Oprah doesn't start talking about it, then the country will not talk about nuclear.